First off, how long have you been playing Overwatch for?
So I played it when it first came out for like two years maybe, but then I took a break
Mhm.
for like a year or so, and I've been playing for like a year or so again.
Okay. And
That makes
then,
sense.
yeah, that makes sense. So let's say like the past 2 weeks or so, how often have you been playing the game?
Probably every other day or so.
Every other day?
Yeah,
Okay.
usually for like 2 hours.
Okay, sounds good. And then final question for you is, do you have any questions for me before we begin?
Not before we begin, I don't think so.
Okay, well then we can just go ahead and get started.
Say that
Whenever.
which is
I'll just be a
unseen.
minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about.
Okay.
The payload moves in accordance. Regen up. Barrier
All right,
unstable.
so already here, just I'll point things out as I see them. I'll go more in depth as they come up. But for the moment, I'm just noticing a couple like half charge shots where we're not really fully charging them. And then usually you're going to want to fully charge your shots just for first off the big one being more consistency. Whereas if you're half charging, you can't really get used to the projectile path as easily, and it's going to be much harder to hit, very slow projectiles, and then also you're doing a lot less damage. So overall, fully charging shots is going to be how you want to do it, unless you are like an inch from someone and they are 1 HP. Right? That's the only time that you would be really using anything less than a full charge shot is when somebody's like right next to you. Whereas here, you may notice a couple of them like there. That's not a full charge shot. We do them like 3 or 4 more times here at a moment. Like we do that's looks like, yeah, that one right there, that one right there, that one right there, right, that one right there, that one right there. Like none of these are fully charged shots, and then that's going to be a big impact on your ability to deal out damage is when you don't fully charge it. And I can demonstrate this if needed, if this looks like it's continuing. But if you're not fully charging your shots, you're really not doing as much damage as you could be, and you're probably not going to get kills. You're not going to be able to one-shot people, which is a big part of Hanzo's kit, being able to get one-shot potential. So overall, just want to make sure we're not doing that. Whereas so far we've seen this with almost every single shot we've shot so far, has been non-fully charged, right?
See through
Yeah, I
the
think I was just doing that because I wasn't aiming at anything specifically, but yeah, it is
Mhm.
a
Yeah,
better
but
habit to just do it every time.
yep, every time, like even if you're
Yeah.
just spamming. Very nice. Okay, so here we end up getting killed, and then let's see,
Yeah.
why did we die? So
I
first off,
think that
it's
junk came up, I didn't
yeah.
notice.
So it seems that first off, like you said, we don't notice the junk guy, which is probably a big thing here. That's just an awareness part. Big part of our deaths comes down to us not being aware of our surroundings, which is pretty important to be aware of. Right when we're not aware that the Junkrat's coming up, but then that can result in us dying. Therefore, we want to make sure we're paying attention. We'll keep an eye on that to see if that continues on, but that's definitely just going into that category of paying attention to your environment. And then if we're paying attention to our environment a little bit more and looking around us and listening, we might be able to survive there.
See
Oh,
through
actually, we get revived here.
this time I will not fail.
Okay, then we just get sniped there. So let's talk about positioning real quick, and then I think, yeah, let's. Trying to think. Never
I
mind.
switched off a Hanzo right there.
Yeah. What? Okay. So you do swap off of Hanzo. Do you know what you swap to here?
Echo.
Echo. Okay. Why don't we talk about positioning real quick? Just go over that. We have a 2-hour session here, so we'll have time to go over about a bunch of things. So this will probably come up again anyways. So just first off with the half charge quarter charge shots, right? You just see like how much that does in comparison to just the ability to one shot somebody. It's a very
Yeah.
massive difference. And we want to make sure we're just going for those. The only times you ever be doing that is if you're, like I said, like you're right next to somebody and you're just finishing them off real quick. But other than that, you're always going to want to really just full charge every shot. That's going to allow you to do your max damage. It's going to be best for spamming, right? Moving on, just general positioning. So where should you be standing, right? So if we're standing right here and the whole enemy team's standing over there and they're all shooting at us, it takes us 1, 2, 3 seconds to get behind cover. Now, from this point, we cannot get shot at. You can't get shot at, through walls. You can't do that. So that means we're safe here. But in the time it took us to walk here, well, we died, right? Because that took too long. But if we're standing here, well, we can do pretty much the exact same thing, except for now it takes us half a second to duck behind this cover, and half a second is 6 times faster than that 3 seconds it took us before, which means that this is much better positioning, right? Because we have the ability to use cover. So therefore, good positioning is the usage of cover, whereas bad positioning is the absence of cover. So we see that, for example, in the death that we just had after we got rezzed, and even in the first death that we had, you can see it a little bit, but we'll demonstrate here in a moment what that looks like. But basically, with both of our deaths, we're just kind of standing out in the open. It's not really using cover too proper. Like, we're not really using cover, and then therefore we died. And obviously, deaths aren't something we want to have. It's not fun for us to have, and then it also means that we're a lot of times in your gameplay, if you're cutting out deaths, that means you're going to be able to do more. So other positioning that's going to be good, right? There's covers all over the place. You have slopes like so. You have, pillars you can use in between shots when you're reloading on characters that need to reload, right? When you're low HP, when you're just ducking behind it, get healed. Corners, same thing, right? Random objects you find sitting around, like you use the payload like this, right? Pillar, corner, doorway, corner, and then all of high ground acts as natural cover. So let's talk about high ground real quick too. So first off, high ground's fantastic. The entire thing acts as natural cover. They can see us, now they can't. He can see us, no he can't, right? All of high ground acts as cover usage. And then on top of that, most characters in the game can't get up to us, right? Like 2/3 of them can't reach us without using the stairs, and then the ones they can need to use abilities, which means that that's even more survivability for us. And then finally, high ground gives us a ton of visibility, right? We can see over here, over there, down there, over here, and then down there, right? Whereas from over here, we can't see over there, not over there, not over there, none of the high grounds, right? So high ground gives us a ton of visibility as well. So that's all why high ground's good. So to, again, link that back to the game you're just in, one of the things I probably would have liked to see us do right as we come out of spawn is look to take up like the top left side, because that's going to be the high ground that you can use, and that can get you around, the other thing that high ground does as well is it gets you around shields, and it gets you around tanks, and it means you can get straight to their back line, and acts as what you call an off angle. So basically all of this is saying high ground is good, want to take high ground. We didn't really take high ground until we climbed up there, and then even when we did, it wasn't really a good usage of a high ground, because keep in mind that there are bad usages of high ground, and there are some high grounds that aren't too great. So look at this, for example, right? If we're standing like right up here and we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, can we shoot at 5 people all at the same time?
No.
No. Can 5 people at the same time shoot at us?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this isn't really doing anything cover-wise. We're just kind of out in the open. And this is, for example, what we were doing on the high ground when we actually climbed up there, right? How you can remedy this is just back up a little bit, right? Add in a crouch. Well, now we've just made that 5 people into a 2 people. Or if we use this sidewall a little bit more, now it's just 1 person who can see us. We get that first kill, and now now we can move on to the next person, right? And then move on to the next person after that. And then if we need to peek to just see where everyone's at, or gathering information, or for a different reason, of course we can peek the edge for a second, but we just don't want to stand here for very long, right? And then there's also some times where high ground isn't going to be the best to be standing on. Like, I don't know if there's many good examples on this map here, but I guess the little bridge that you're on in game isn't really a great high ground because you don't have anywhere to back up to, right? We talked about one of the big reasons why high ground's so good and it's a cover is because you have somewhere to back up to, right? Like we can back up here and now they can't see us, but on that little thin strip of high ground you had, there wasn't anywhere you could back up to where you would be safe, right? Like, for example, you can maybe take one of these little pillars here as an example, right? Like this is technically a high ground, but we can't back up away from the ledge because there's no ledge to back up away from, and therefore it doesn't act as cover when we're up here, right? So again, all of this to say that so far in our game, positioning hasn't been looking the best, from being out in the open and dying out in the open, to misuse of high ground, to not taking high ground when it was an option, right? And those just are all the things that we're noticing so far. We can probably look to, that all makes sense, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can probably look to just go ahead and hop back in the game then. Alright, so, oh snap, looks like I have a lot of root games. Hopefully this is the right one.
Traveling to route ready for battle.
Yes, alright, there we go. Alright, like here we kind of come out on the bottom, probably recommend coming out on the top. From here we can just get around Reinhardt's shield and the tanks, and then immediately get to their back line, while also having cover that we can use both right, left, and backwards. This high ground isn't the best because there's nowhere that you can back off to, as well as when we do back off of it, we just plop ourselves out in the middle of nowhere, out in the open, and that's what we do, and then therefore we die twice in a row because the high ground wasn't the best there, so just positional things to help us stay alive longer. And then I think we're ahead of this right after we swapped Echo. Okay. Watch the bubbles. Make sure not just spamming them with damage if possible. All right, there Reinhardt got bubbled and we just kept shooting. Right, whereas if we see it, the bubble, probably want to stop shooting at it. So there are times where you do shoot at bubbles and times where you don't. The times where you do shoot at bubbles is when you know that you can kill the person who's being bubbled. So like if Zarya is bubbling herself but she's 1 HP, go ahead and try to shoot at it because then you can break it and then kill her hopefully, right? Or if somebody else is like low or out of position or whatnot, then you can just break through the bubble. But if we're just giving her free energy here, probably don't want to be doing that.
Mobility increased.
Okay, so far stickies and shots have been looking pretty solid.
What is that melody? Let them out.
Okay, a lot more of just shooting at her bubbles there. Just maybe just put a hold on the shooting. Pay attention to when she's using her bubbles.
Boosting up. Heroes never die.
Barrier impact. Nuclear area no longer exists.
Locking on.
Good, very nice beam. Okay, I like the frequency that we're using stickies. That's good. Make sure we're not flying in off of no real. Okay, so he does get low there. So here the issue is that we're flying in when we don't really have a way to finish him off. So I think this would be completely fine, for example, if you had beam, but we don't have beam, and now he's just being healed through all your regular damage. And beam would be our burst, right? Beam would be how we would burst him down and like kill, and keep him killed. But here, when we don't have that beam, flying in isn't gonna result in him getting killed unless you land every perfect headshot on him with your normal shots. So I probably would say that this is a bad decision to be pushing in here because he's just gonna get healed. He has cover to use. He has health pack just an inch from him. And we're just flying in right next to him where it makes it super easy for him to shoot at us when we don't have any way to capitalize here. So we just want to, again, this is kind of like a mix between decision making and awareness where we need to be aware of the fact that we don't have beam and then make the correct decision accordingly. Okay, so there we just go in, don't do really anything. Okay, we make it out though, that's good.
Adjusting angle of attack.
Barrier is unstable.
Finishing them off.
Okay, if you notice that like your beam's not doing anything, so here we get her down low and then she just gets healed up. So first off, pay attention to the health bar because we have to be real careful. She did nade herself and then get healed, and then we pop beam after that point. So we just want to, again, awareness, paying attention to our environment. We'll go more in depth on awareness if we see this just continuing to be a thing and continuing to be a thing. So far it's looking like it is continuing a little bit, but we want to make sure we're paying attention to her health bar so that we're not beaming when she's full HP. And then the other thing is, if you accidentally use your beam, just cancel it because it's doing pretty much 0 damage. If they're not under half, right, it's not really doing anything for you. So even if we mess up here but you see that she's half HP, and you press beam, just cancel it, right? Double click it a second time and then it'll cancel, and that way you can just get back to shooting, and stickies, which will be higher damage output than just your tiny little beam doing not really a lot. Okay, good health pack usage. Alright. Still winnable. Let's see who we use copy on. Okay, so use it on Reinhardt. All right, so we do get a pin out of that, though I would probably recommend against this. Now, this is like getting into kind of Reinhardt, tips and stuff like that, which is, a little, out of the character, but Echo has to know how to play other characters to, actually utilize her ultimate. But usually on Reinhardt, doing long charges is not the way to go. You don't want to charge a very long distance. This is a very long distance from here to those guys over there
Reinhardt.
in the wall we're aiming for. The wall we're aiming for is right here. That's a solid like 40 meters away here. Way too long of a charge, right? Now let's say we are like right here and we charge, so like we're hitting this wall and we're right here. Now that's like 5 meters, right? That's probably like 8 times less of a distance, right? That we're charging. Which means that we are going to be pretty much getting out of that animation immediately. We're gonna be able to just immediately put our shield back up and keep swinging on stuff, and we just get a really fast 300 damage in. But charging this distance is going to do nothing but just give them a whole like 5 seconds where we can't control our movement and we can't put up shield. So we're just going in walking in a straight line, letting them stun us and shoot us for free. And that's what ends up happening is, though, even though we get one kill here, whereas she probably actually could have walked out of it pretty easily. Even though we get one kill here, Hanzo just melts us out of our ultimate. Whereas we probably want to be shooting for more than just one kill with an ultimate. So overall, not super well used. So in this, again, to clarify the point I'm making here, don't charge a super long distance. Only charge if it's a short distance. You'd probably be better off turning and swinging on the Reinhardt and the Zarya, or even just saving copy for a better instance where they're more grouped up or the supports are closer, or you can like fly in further and then copy Reinhardt and drop on top of them. But we just shouldn't be charging at them like this, and then that does get us one kill, but we probably could do a lot more with it if we just didn't do this longer charge.
Reversing personality module.
Hey, very nice. Probably just say use your stickies, but that's it. Good kills. It looks like so far I'd say that our ability usage is looking pretty solid on Echo here.
Taking off. You should be
We seem to have a pretty good grasp on the stickies and the beam at the very least. Fly. This has been a couple times where we just the one time on Hanzo where we just kind of flew into him, but besides that, ability usage overall has been looking pretty solid.
lifting off.
Again, just spamming her bubbles, even though we see that they're up, we keep shooting.
Locking on.
Okay, using the beam too early again, watching health bars, as well as making sure that we are canceling it when they are not low.
Yeah, I thought I was out of regular ammo, so instead of reloading,
Yeah.
I thought he was close enough, but yeah, he wasn't.
Oh, whoops.
Reloaded.
Yeah, so here, yeah,
Locking on.
you just too much. It'd probably just be better to do to reload, right? Ooh, very nice shot though. Overall mechanics has been the other one that I think we've been pretty solid on.
Watching Winston paid off. In case you're
Hey.
wondering, that's
So yeah, if we're looking at, we'll go over strengths, weaknesses in a minute, but so far just the first glance is looking like ability usage and mechanics are looking like the best. Then we're struggling most with positioning and awareness, and then ultimate usage is looking kind of in the middle, though we'll, of course, as a 2-hour session, those will be adjusted up and down as we go along. And then we'll go more in depth on that in a moment just to clarify on it. Then we'll go a little bit more.
I think a lot of it is lack of, I don't know what to call it, not map knowledge, because I know the maps, but I just don't know the best strategies for the maps, I guess.
Which, I mean, let me think about that. So far, I think you've been approaching it fine. So different maps don't necessarily have different strategies. Different maps have different characters that are good on them, and there can be strategies, but strategies a lot of the time are more so something that you equate with team play, where you're playing with a team that can execute a strategy. Whereas if you're playing in ranked, your team's not going to be willing to cooperate with a strategy. So therefore, a lot of the time, there's not really very much strategy involved in playing Overwatch, unless you had more of a I guess
that's not the right word I'm looking for.
yeah.
Maybe it is just positioning is the best way.
Yeah,
I just don't know which one's the best. The
or
different characters and stuff.
Yeah, kind of like a different play style for each character, and how each character plays. That's maybe one I would say is maybe you're looking for. But yeah, we'll keep going here. I'll kind of keeping an eye out for what it is that you're looking to need to work on. But so far, it's just been mainly the two I mentioned. There is positioning and then awareness, and then ultimate usage, right, are the big ones so far. And then we'll just continue on here.
I need a health restore.
Press it again
I
if
need a
they.
health
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I was spamming it like pocket me please, but she was not having it.
Yeah.
Took a second.
I was not expecting that res. That was my fault.
Yeah, so here we gotta be careful. So first off with the flight pattern here, we do fly up at the McCree, but we also have to be careful because Soldier is sitting top right. And if we're looking at our current positioning from the eyes of Soldier, we're not really utilizing cover too well, right? Like if we were to utilize cover, we would be flying and maybe dipping a little bit lower so we can use these pillars or whatnot, right? But we're just flying up out in the open. So even while flying, we have to keep in mind the cover usage. So in the same, the same with Farah, same on Echo, same on Mercy. While you're up in the air, you can't just completely ignore, ignore cover. If we're standing over here, we're gonna get melted insanely fast. Whereas what we want to be using is using more like buildings and objects and things up in the sky that we can use, right? Like for example, we could use this little thing over what do you call it? This big wall here, right? If we're spamming at people on the high ground, we can use this. Therefore we can just put them out of our line of sight if we're low, right? Here we can use the pillars. We can use the sign here if we wanted to. There's honestly not a lot of cover, and that's why sky characters aren't going to be as good on this point as on other maps, right? Whereas like over here, maybe you'd have more of like this high ground to utilize and a little bit more buildings to work with and high grounds. But at the moment, we just are too far out in the open, and therefore that's going to allow Soldier to melt us very easily. So kind of gets back into positioning,
System health compromised.
and then we die, right? So just a little too overly aggressive, a little bit too out in the open, and then now that is 1, 2, 3, 4 times we've died, yeah, in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. So that's not that great of a death rate, right, to be having. We want to make sure we're dying less than that, and then all these deaths so far we've seen have been pretty easily preventable, or at least I think the last one we had wasn't too bad, but the three other ones, right, were easily preventable deaths if we're understanding positioning, especially was the one that was killing us in all of those. So we just want to make sure we're paying attention to that, and then therefore dying less, and then therefore we'll have a lot more of an impact in our games. All right.
This was just me trying to stall.
Yep.
Payload's moving. Someone call for air support.
I've got you in my sights.
Adaptive circuits engaged.
Very nice.
Soldier 76.
Though if possible, probably say in this situation, going for a tank might find you more value as you'd be able to sustain longer than a soldier. Now that it did keep us alive from dying to the soldier, but if we just look around here, like, do we have options to other supports? So we are at 96 here.
I would have just been dead instantly if I didn't copy there.
Well, I mean, here you have a cart as cover. I mean, I'd probably say that it's iffy. You could probably go either way. Like, for example, here we could probably just look to the left and copy the Zarya. Though either way, honestly, to be quite frank, either way, we're not going to win this fight. This is a pretty much lost fight, and right now we're just talking about efficiency. I guess it's maybe doable. I mean, it's a 2v3. No, sorry, 2v4. Reinhardt's over here, right? But copying this Arya would probably keep us alive longer with an extra bubble with 400 HP. Here we have the card as cover. We can maybe crouch into the side here using it as cover. Like if you look at your perspective against the soldier, he can't really shoot at you if you're using this cart, right? So here he shoots us, and then now the cart's blocking it. He's going to come down. Instead, we move out in the open and then copy him, right? Which isn't a terrible play. It's just maybe not the most efficient, which is what we were talking about there. But like I said, not a very big mistake.
I was trying to burst him down with headshots, but once I realized he wasn't going to die first, I just popped the ult to stay alive.
Yep. Alright. All right. Well, I have to just. Okay, this is a pretty short game.
Ready.
Not hold.
Yeah.
2, 1. Attackers
I haven't played Symmetra on this map very often, so I wasn't really sure good
Payload.
turret spots.
Yeah. So.
That's one of those things I was talking about with like the
Mm.
different map knowledge.
Yeah. So typically, when it comes to turrets, I would say in this instance, it can go either one of two ways. If you get here very fast, let's see. If you get here, let's see when we place these turrets. So we place these turrets with.
I got here quick, but I hesitated way too long trying to decide where to put
Yeah.
them.
Teleporter is online.
Yeah, so that's what I would say. Like, if we get here and we place these immediately, then what happens is that even if the turrets get broken immediately, then we still have another round to go, right? We still have 3 more turrets that we can use. But if we wait until the very last second, so we get here with 14 seconds to spare. If we start throwing these start recharging, and then we'll have all the turrets again. But because we wait so long deciding, that means that this is now probably, I would say, a bad play, because now we can like watch and see how long it takes to get our turrets. Alright, we'll just, I guess, skip forwards a little bit. So we throw our turrets down. I would imagine those turrets are going to do like a tiny little bit of ult charge, but that's about it, right? Those turrets aren't going to do any more than ult charge, and then we're probably not going to have all of our turrets by the time this fight actually starts. So we're at, 1.5, almost 2 right now. I guess maybe we'll actually get them. So. But at the same time, you might also want this time to actually be spamming in there and doing damage. So, honestly, just throw them earlier. It's fine if you throw them for spam. Just get them out sooner. That way you have them charge back up by the time this fight starts, so that you can actually be having an impact during this fight. Now, let's look as well at the playstyle. We're playing like a spam character. So Symmetra is a brawl character. So that means that Symmetra basically likes to be up close and personal with people. She's a character that prefers to be more so within the range of like a Reinhardt. So the best positioning we could be having here would be like right behind our Reinhardt and Zarya, and like right on top of them. This is for the purpose that we will be doing a heck of a lot more damage than if we're just sitting here and right clicking, by getting our beam up to high charge, which we can do very easily off of the shield. We can help melt the Reinhardt shield very fast. I assume that you're aware of how much damage Symmetra does when she's left clicking at full beam charge. It does a lot, and therefore we want to be getting that up and online. Now, there's nothing wrong with throwing out right clicks as spam when you're too far away from the enemy to actually damage them, right? Of course, that you want to be using it as a long range ability when you can't get to them. So, for example, when they're walking to you from spawn. But if your team's in the middle of brawling with you and is within this range on them, you should probably be within that range on them as well, rather than sitting very far in the back, right? Whereas you're back here and not really going to be able to do nearly as much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I had this set up because I was worried about someone flanking up to the top, and I was planning to be ready to jump over there and brawl with them. High ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, it probably would have just been better just to help kill the tanks quicker.
Yeah, in which case maybe you can, in that instance, what if we just sat with the tanks, and then if someone went above us, we could just have a TP from like down here to up top, right? Pretty much the same thing, except for we're just now in a better position to help our team, and that TP at the same time would also help out everybody on our team as well. Anybody could go through the TP if they wanted, right? Does that make sense?
We still need you. Sentry deployed.
Alright, so now we're charging up the beam, but the issue is that it's happening way too late. We didn't output enough damage. We didn't do things for all intensive purposes. For most of that fight, we were not having any big impact or carry potential or anything, and therefore their DPS did. Their DPS killed your Reinhardt, and then now they're at a advantage, right? And we're not. So here, our impact on losing this fight is that we didn't have an impact, right? Is that we didn't do anything. We just kind of sat back, right? And we didn't leave any impact, right? So you have to keep in mind that sometimes, there's a very fine line between the two, where you can be too aggressive, but you can also be too passive. Being too aggressive and dying all the time can mean that now you're dead and not participating for too long. But if you're kind of sitting too passive too often on your character, especially when your character isn't meant to be played passive, that can mean that you're not doing anything at all anyways, right? So for example, you can be sitting in spawn for the entire game and never die once, but still be doing absolutely nothing, right? So as that kind of feeding into this, we played super safe and we didn't die, yes, but we also didn't really impact, and therefore we're losing the fight anyways. Now, this only applies to because this every single character plays differently. The exact same thing that you're doing there could work on a different character. Like that might work on Hanzo. Like your positioning there would have probably been fine if you were playing Hanzo, or if you were playing Widow or Ashe or Soldier, or like any of those characters, right? Probably would have been a lot better if you were positioned there than if you're just sitting on the front line. But because Symmetra is a different character, we need to play differently on that character. Alright.
I jumped down to try and secure it, and she was already gone.
Yeah.
We move swiftly.
No problem with this. They're about to cap. Alright. So, and I believe that is just game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Alright. So then we just move on to the next one. But real quick before we get into the next one, why don't we just go over strengths and weaknesses real quick. So let me get that open, and then while we're doing that. Alright, so strengths and weaknesses, kind of what we're working with at the moment. Ability usage, slightly inconsistent, like, of course, everything's going to have a slight inconsistency level. No one's perfect with anything. So ability usage does have slight inconsistency where we do mess up with our abilities once in a while, particularly, like, I'd probably say sticky usage was the best, beam usage was like probably the worst, and then the flying was like the medium of them all, and then that was kind of how those worked. But overall, there is very, you use your abilities pretty well. So probably say that your ability usage goes at like a low to medium priority for the moment, priority for you to work on them. Moving on, ultimate usage, we saw two of them. The second one, we of course was kind of like not much you could have done with it, but then the one before that was really the one to focus in on. As the one before that we didn't use the best, and that was just particularly because we charged. But at the same time, I'd probably like to see more. I think we had good timing with the ultimate, and we had good target selection with the ultimate. It was more so that we just played the character wrong, which is to be expected if you're not a Reinhardt player, right? So overall, we'll be hesitant with that one for now, because I'll definitely want to see more, and we will see more in the next hour and 20 minutes, right? But
Yeah.
I
Echo is
probably
by far my least played hero
Mhm.
out of my playing hero pool or whatever.
Yeah. So
I'm still pretty new to her. I don't have
Mhm.
the beam cooldown on a
Yeah.
good feel for that yet.
So for now, I'd probably just put that at a low to medium as well, and then we'll adjust that as we go. I would, we'll see if it gets better or worse, right? Then moving on to, let's see, what are the other ones. So let's get on to mechanics. Mechanics is just, us shooting, so far we haven't really talked much on mechanics, and so far it's looked pretty solid. We haven't really had a problem with hitting our shots or killing people. It's just a lot of the other ones that are impacting our ability to kill people. So honestly, mechanics for now, at the very least, is going down to a low priority for you to work on it. It's not really something that's really needed, but you have to keep in mind that there's a lot of things that impact your mechanics besides just, can I go pew pew click click? Putting yourself in good positions to do that, and having good awareness to do that, and not being dead so that you can do that more often and have carrying impact, and knowing when to be aggressive and passive, and where to be, should we be sitting back or standing closer forwards, is all going to impact your ability to do things. Even if we have good tracking on Symmetra, we're not able to utilize that properly if we're not playing at the appropriate distance, for example, right? So a lot of other things feeding into that. So that one's going in a low. Positioning, probably say so far, is like the biggest one that we were looking at. Positioning has caused a lot of our deaths, and a lot of very preventable deaths, and we've been out in the open, and we haven't been taking high grounds as often as we should have been on Hanzo. And then on top of that, we've been out in the open when we're flying as Echo. And then on top of that, we have been too far back as Symmetra. And then there's just a lot of bits and pieces here and there that have fed into positioning. And so far, this one, let's see, I'd probably say this one's going either a medium high or a high priority, with how much it needs to be worked on. And then Finally, we get to awareness. Awareness has been looking a little high as well on the list. Awareness, we've talked, just keeping our eyes and ears open. There's been a lot of times where just these little odds and ends here and there where we didn't notice a Junkrat sneaking up next to us, which is just paying attention and listening. And then there's the other ones where we don't notice health bars on enemy players, and then we use our beaming correctly, or we don't cancel our beam. And then on from there, there's been other tiny bits and pieces all over the place. So it does come in over the other ones a little bit here. So probably say it's not as big as the positioning, and we're probably going to put it at a medium priority for now. And we'll, again, that one's usually one of the slower ones to diagnose because it's not out in the open and as apparent as some of the other ones. So we'll, again, adjust as we go along here. Let me get that next one open now.
Traveling to Havana. Ready for battle.
Okay, so we're number 7.
I can't.
3, 2, 1.
I think I have a rough start on this game.
Okay.
Justice
I saw they had an echo or something, so I switched off Hanzo to his game.
Okay.
That's not right.
So here, probably say especially at the beginning there, we're just sitting way too far back. Take the time to push forwards. So like right as it's starting out here, and again, I'll mention this briefly, unless it keeps on picking back up and repeating itself. But here we're sitting like really far back, whereas we could have been pushing forward. So like right around now is where, for example, we could be up closer to cart or pushing up along the left side or something of that sort. But we're hanging back, and at this distance, two big things is we are doing basically very, very little damage because of our fall off at this range. We're doing like half damage because of how far away we are from people. And then on top of that, it's going to be very inaccurate because of how small of targets they are. So getting closer is going to allow us to do more damage and hit more shots. And then we just kind of sit back. Then we push forwards, which is good. Right after a little bit, we push forwards, miss the flashbang. And they get a kill. At this point, we're dead.
Back in the saddle again.
We need to get the payload moving.
Going free.
I'll keep you here.
Let's rewatch this for a moment.
Going free.
Okay, I was noticing this a little bit on Echo 2, so I think we're going to talk about that. Just let me eye it up for another moment. Alright, so let's talk about that real quick so we're, go back this range. So we're going to go over crosshair placement real quick. So are you familiar with that term?
Yeah, like pre-aiming
Justice
and
ain't
stuff.
gonna dispense.
Yeah,
it,
pre-aiming is
sir.
definitely a big part of it. So, we'll go more in depth on that. So, crosshair placement, one of the biggest first points to crosshair placement is making sure that we're aiming head level. So far here on Echo as well, and on Echo I didn't think it was as apparent, but on McCree especially here, we're aiming a little bit low on people. So when we're coming up to people, we're aiming more so at their like chests rather than their heads. And then what this means is that headshots just become less accessible. So headshots obviously do a lot more damage than body shots do. We want to be hitting headshots. And the further we have to adjust, right, like having to adjust up makes it a harder shot by default. So when we have to adjust really far, it's just a really hard shot to make rather than if we're just going to the side here, right? It's just a lot easier of shots. So that basically means we want to walk around aiming head level because this means that shots are going to be coming easier and we don't have to adjust as much, which means more shots we're hitting at head level, right? So if we're just spamming down a corridor, right, spamming into shields, and we're aiming at body level, or just all our default shots are hitting body level. But if we're doing the exact same thing, spamming on a corridor, spamming into shields, spamming at it just in general are shooting. If we're aiming at head level now, we're just naturally hitting headshots and doing a lot more damage. It just kind of comes naturally because we're walking around at this level. So just aiming head level is going to be a big one. Now you also got the the next major point to it is pre-aiming, right? Aiming where we know people are going to be. But we're going to mix that in, and we're also going to aim where we know people are going to be at head levels. So bots top left, already be pre-aiming at the head level so that it's very little adjustment until we see them, right? It just makes shots easier. It makes it more damage easier, and that means you're going to be hitting more shots, right, if we're aiming at that level, whereas for the moment, we're not really doing that too well. Now, let's talk about just distancing real quick on McCree. So when it comes to McCree, don't want to be standing too far away, and that applies to like characters like Hanzo and Echo as well, right? Is that they prefer a little bit of a closer distance. So if we are standing right up here, right, we do 1, 2, 3 shots, body shot to kill, right? We just back up a little tiny bit to over here. Now we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4 shots to kill, right? That is fall off damage. That means we're doing less damage at a distance. We take that to the extreme, and now we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shots to kill, which is twice the amount of shots that it takes to kill someone. And on top of that, at this distance, we're gonna be very inaccurate, as when you're shooting at a tiny little target over there, it's much more difficult than when you're shooting at someone who's this big on you, and it's gonna be much easier shots. So we're gonna be missing a lot more shots as well. So overall, that's not just a half. Like when we're sitting at this distance, it's not just a half decrease in damage, it's more than half because we're also missing a lot more shots. So real important that we just be closer. So on McCree, you can, if you are forced to, so let's say you're just walking back from spawning or shooting at this distance, or the enemy team is super far away from you, just naturally, we can shoot at this distance, but our goal should be to get closer. We should be shooting at this distance while walking closer, while walking towards them. But our preferred distance on McCree is going to be around a close to medium range. Now, we don't want to get too close here, because if we get too close, then people just are better at being close than we are. Like, think Reaper, Mei, Reinhardt, right? They're just better at being close than we are. But probably around 10 meters. 10 meters is the max range for your flashbangs, so we're going to be able to hit flashbangs. Somewhere around 10 meters to, like, 30 meters is a good range to be in, right? If we're further than that, if we're needing more than 1, 2, 3, 4 shots to kill, that's a little too much. That's where you're not really doing very much damage. It's gonna be very hard to get kills. So we've seen that now twice in the game that you're in, where we're just kind of sitting at that distance for too long and not pushing forwards where we could. So we just want to make sure we're pushing forwards, and then that's another part of positioning as well, right? Kind of feeds into that category of understanding I'm on a different character. Different characters play differently. Each character has a different play style, so you're playing differently on Hanzo to McCree to Mei. And something else to keep in mind on Hanzo is that the same concept applies. You don't want to be that far away on Hanzo, not because he doesn't do the same amount of damage, but because his shots become much more inaccurate, and therefore you're hitting a lot less shots. So Hanzo can do a little bit further away than McCree, so I probably would say Hanzo would be more so like a 20 meters to, he's pretty flexible as well, maybe like 15 meters to 35 meters, right? That-ish, just a little bit further back than McCree is where Hanzo would be standing, since you play him a little bit too.
Hey, I could use some shields.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Winston.
I swear it's so hard to get healed down here.
Yep. You're doing the right thing. You're clicking the button. You can say it in chat if they don't if they don't look at you after you click it, and then you can just say it in chat real quick. And then on top of that, you can look to grab a health pack. Whereas there's not really a health pack anywhere near you, so you're justified in just waiting for it. And then you also walk in front of her, which you attempted to do. So you're making all the right plays there.
Hi.
Normally I wouldn't waste an ult on this, but Deadeye kind of sucks. So. I might be able to get the kill on the Echo out of it.
I've got unfinished business.
The payload is secure. Move it out.
Whoa there.
Okay, Flashbang has not noticed any of those connecting so far, so we'll keep an eye on that, but we just want to make sure we're putting more effort into our Flashbangs, right? Aim higher with it, make sure we're intentionally trying to get it around the shield, whereas we haven't been landing them so far, so we're going to keep more of an eye on that. Sitting really far back, right? Even when the high noon's gone there, we're just kind of chilling. We're super far back. Like, notice how we're just like the furthest back on our out of every single person on our team, just doing a lot less damage. So again, that just comes back to positioning and not understanding where we should be standing as our character. Okay, you can see the crosshair placement a little bit here. I never showed you this yet, but you can see it demonstrated here while we're looking around at their feet, right? Walking here, you can see it in comparison to Baptiste where crosshair's at, and therefore that becomes a lot harder of a headshot to hit if we're not already aiming there. Now we adjust it up a little bit, but we're still not aiming head level, which means that we're hitting body shots here while we're aiming through. Still standing really far away from people. I've also noticed us standing still quite a bit. Like we just did that a moment ago when we were over here and we kind of stood on top of a cart or something like that. Or no, on top of this like car. And we just stood still for a little bit while we shot. And then we also just stood still like a moment ago while we were shooting. So let's like relook at that. Let's see, right, we're shooting when we're standing still, right, doing it again, standing still, right. So there we just stood still for like a solid like 5 seconds. Probably not going to want to do that a lot of the time, even if it's very situational where you do it and probably not that long. Situations where that is acceptable is like if you're sure that nobody knows where you are, so you just went on an off angle or a flank and nobody's looking at you, you can stand still for the first second or two before they do start looking at you, but once they start looking at you, you want to move around. You can also do it if you have like, for example, maybe like a beat or so, and you like, or you guaranteed almost invincibility, like you have an immortality field, or you have a beat, or you have a trance. Those are some situations where maybe you can do it. You can maybe do it if you have a shield, but again, it's really situational because shields, through immortality, you probably won't be taking a ton of damage. Through trance, you can get one shot. Through a shield can go down. They can get around shields. So standing still's usually not something you're going to want to do for very long, and it's only in certain situations. This is not one of those situations. So maybe we could be standing still while we have this bubble here, which is a little bit fine because we're not going to be taking a ton of damage, but the bubble goes down, right? And we actually notice we're not taking any damage here, and nobody knows we're here. So this first couple of seconds is fine, but bubble goes down, and now people are actually looking at us, and then we still are standing still here, right? People are looking at us, shooting at us, bubbles down, and we're still standing still, which just definitely should not be a time where we're standing still. And then as a result, we die, right? Very easily preventable death if we're just moving left to right. That's called AD strafing, where we're just constantly going left, right, left, right, left, right. Or, I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly left, right, left, right, left, right. We can mix it up. But again, in easily preventable death. Now, let's look at survivability a little bit here real quick. We haven't been surviving very long so far from what we've seen. I probably say if we're tracking here, we now have 3 deaths within 3 minutes, and it's looking like our death rate is around 1 death per minute. So that is not so great, as let's say that current rate keeps up, and let's take out like, let's take out like 2 minutes just for spawn times. So let's just get a rough average and say that's like 12 deaths here, right, in this game. That's not that great, right? In 12 deaths, every single death that you have is 10 seconds of respawning time and 10 seconds while you're walking back to the fight, right? Which means that's 20 seconds of death, right? So that means that overall, with that 12 seconds, that would be, divide by 3. I'm kind of having a brain fart at the moment with my math skills. So that'd be roughly 4 minutes, where you are just flat up not participating. 4 minutes of gameplay where you are just not existing, doing nothing, right? Which is pretty nuts to think about. That's the amount of time that you could be having like 3 ultimates. That's the amount of time that you could be getting tons of kills and tons of damage, right? And then not only are we just we're having 0 impact, we're also having a negative impact, right, as well, because every time we're dying, it's not as if we just don't exist. We're putting our team at a disadvantage, right? Every time we're dying, we're putting our team at like a 5v6 or a 4v5, right? Or whatever. We're putting our team down people, which means that we're more likely to lose those fights. So not only are we doing nothing, but we're also that's our impact on losing that fight, right? When we're dying, which means that we want to look to cut out our deaths, right? Not all deaths are created equal. Some deaths are worse than others, right? So, for example, dying first in a fight is much worse than dying last in a fight. We died last in a fight the first time we died, which isn't too terrible because if we're dying last, that means the fight was already over and it doesn't matter. In fact, that can be good for you to die there, so you're not staggering yourself. But if we're dying first, or we're dying here where we are, let's see, where we're dying. Where in this fight, this fight is still potentially winnable if we don't die here. Like if we don't die here, it's a 3v4 and two of them are half HP, right? That's still pretty winnable, right? That's doable. And you guys have teammates coming back as well, right? But because we're dying now, that ends up losing the fight. So want to make sure we're not dying. This is the same thing in the last game as well. Is we're dying very frequently. Now let's cut. We discussed why dying is bad. But let's talk about how do we look to stop our deaths, right? Well, first off, we have to, whenever fixing any mistakes, you have to identify what the mistake is. Here, obviously, the mistake is dying, but you have to go one step further and figure out why are you dying, right? Usually, you have four different main causes of death. You have a misuse of abilities, such as a McCree rolling into the enemy team. You have over aggression, such as a McCree rolling into the enemy team. You have a lack of positioning, right? Which again, or poor positioning, sorry. Which again, McCree rolling into the enemy team. I just find that funny that all three of those are that. And then finally, you have a lack of awareness, which would be not paying attention to your environment, which could be like the Junkrat sneaking up next to in the last game we were in, right? So far, most of your deaths have been caused by the lack of, by poor positioning. I probably say that's made up probably like 3/4 of them so far, with a couple of the others mixed in there. Like one time we had two over aggression, one time we had a lack of awareness, one time here we were standing still, and then sometimes the deaths have been fine because it was I don't really count the stall death at all, right? Because that one's, of course, what else are you going to do, right? The death where you died at the very end of the fight, not much you could do. But we just want to look to figure out what did we do wrong. Then once we find out what did we do wrong, so let's say take positioning, we want to look to fix our positioning. So in the middle of your games, while you're playing, we can think in our head, okay, I just died. I realized I was in a bad position, and you can think to yourself, okay, well, what's the solution to this? What could we have done instead? So you think to yourself, okay, well, if I was in bad positioning, where could I have positioned instead, right? So what could have been better positioning? So if we take the high ground example where you were in bad high ground, just being a little bit to the left means that now you're in a good high ground, right? We were on the high ground that sucked, whereas if we went just tiny, just 5 meters to the left on the other map, right, we would now be on a good high ground where we could utilize cover properly, right? So you can look at the game while you're playing, or outside when you're not playing, right, and go, okay, this is what I probably could have done to do better, right? And then that's how you look to solve deaths and do more and stay alive and have an impact.
Mobility increased.
It ain't my.
Quiz time, ready to go. Quiz time.
One moment, I'm just checking something real quick. Okay. So we do use roll there to get back. That's good. I maybe would have used the roll second time just to get closer, right? Again, just closing that distance. Here we're just sitting real far back, and now we're getting closer, and that's good. All right. But yeah, so far we just have noticed that we just I guess even in both of our games, we just haven't been doing a ton. Like here, even though we capped, probably say we didn't have a ton of an impact in that fight, right? Like we did a little bit of damage, but we didn't get any kills. So far on this attack, it's been 4 minutes, and we haven't really gotten any kills. We've done a little bit of damage, but we haven't really had much of an impact, and I'd probably attribute a lot of that to dying constantly and being out of position, because when we're sitting way too far away or we're in bad positioning, we're not going to be able to utilize our mechanics, which is something I've been saying. So just that's one of the big things here, is that we're just not doing things, and that's because of the fact that we're dead or we're in bad positioning.
Nanoboost administered.
Okay, so here, for example, let's look at this.
I wanted to push up, but Zen would not stand on it.
Okay, well, let's look at this right
I
as
was
we're...
asking him in voice chat. I was like, Zen, can you sit on cart so I can?
Okay.
Nanoboost administered.
So, I mean, he does come over and stand on cart, and then we're still kind of chilling. Does he... like, I guess elaborate, like, did he say no in chat?
No response, which is
No response? Well, I mean,
most of my games, I don't get any voice chat
yeah.
back.
Mhm. Which, here he does come over to cart, yeah, we kinda still sit around, and then,
Yeah, then
you know
he takes off.
which, keeping in mind that maybe he took off because now you're sitting on cart for too long, right? If, for example, let's say we waited till he came over to cart and then we roll forwards and just away from cart, well, now that's giving Zen the body language that now it's his job to take over cart. Whereas if we're just chilling there, which we did, we just kind of sat there after he arrived. That could be giving off the body language that now, hey, I'm gonna do cart, right? So there we as soon as he came, and then worse comes worse. If you roll away and then he moves forwards, then you can just go back to cart, and you've wasted what, like 3 seconds at max. That's not really going to have an insane impact on anything. That's not going to lose you the game just because you lost 3 seconds. And really, you want just efficiency here. It'd probably be most efficient if you just started walking away, and then we could be walking towards the fight and having an impact. So there, we just kind of invited him to walk forwards by not walking away, is what I would say.
I've secured the payload. Let's move it out.
And then now we see that we do have people on cart, right? Like we have on cart, us on cart, Zen's like an inch away from cart, right? Like we do have 3 people. Yeah, so 2 that are both on cart. This is where we can maybe be like rotating and actually going in and doing things, right? So that's good. And we're just, the fight's happening really far away from us at the moment.
Honor.
Okay, so there we didn't seem to notice that the echo was over on our right, or at least we didn't care or so. Like we see her fly over there. We
I didn't
watch
see
her.
it.
Kind of like tracked there with our crosshair. Like we see her here.
I was just trying to shoot the BAP, I think.
Yeah. So like here we didn't see her, even though we. Okay.
Maybe I did. I don't remember, but
Okay. Well then,
I don't think so.
if we don't see her there, then that's a mistake, right? That's the mistake
Yeah.
we're looking at. And why don't we talk about that real quick then? And we also hear audio as well. She goes Anna, and then she's ulting, and we hear the fly, and we hear all these things with our audio. So we want to make sure that we're intentionally, upping our volume if we need to, but then also intentionally thinking about the audio cues, right, and making sure we're listening for the her voice lines, and listening for the fly, and listening to when she's shooting, right? That way we can actually go over and help Anna, possibly get a kill and keep her alive, whereas Anna does die here. So let's talk about awareness real quick, because we haven't really gone in depth on awareness. And then you might be saying in your head, well, Tsubogi, yeah, you're saying to get better at awareness, but awareness seems pretty vague, right? With positioning, you've been giving me like this is where you should be standing, and you've been giving me a little bit more solid information on it. But awareness, like how does one get better at awareness? It seems like a pretty vague topic. Well, you look to get better at awareness the exact same way that you get better at anything that you're trying to improve at, and that is while you're playing, you're going to make sure that you're focusing on it. And that means that you're not going to be autopiloting while you play, or just playing to play. And contrary to popular belief, you're not going to just be playing to win, as just playing to win is one of the best ways to stagnate and never improve. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to play to improve. And then when you play to improve, that means that you're going to actually start to see improvement. So what that looks like with your gameplay is while you're playing, you're going to think in your head, awareness, right? And when you do that, you're giving yourself constant reminders. You're now going to be looking around yourself a little bit more and listening a little bit more. And now that means your awareness is going to be looking a lot more solid, because you're putting a lot more focus and attention into it. When you do that for a long enough period of time, that forms as a habit. And then once it forms as a habit, you no longer need to put the exact same focus and energy and attention into it. And then you can move on to a different area to improve on, right? Then finally, just last thing to add in on there is just make sure you're not doing single thing at once, right? You that's gonna get overwhelming. You don't want to do everything at once, because we're talking about a ton of things. Instead, focus on one category of things, or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category, right? And then move on to other ones once you get done with those.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Honor. Enemy contact.
Okay. So there, for example, we just kind of reacted a little bit slowly to the Reaper, right? Like, first off, not too sure if we even noticed that they have a Reaper, which could come down to making sure you're paying attention to team compositions. On top of that, we get shot at. Notice that when you get shot at, you get damage indicators. You see where we're getting shot from, right? So here we see that we're getting shot at, and it's coming from above our crosshair, and we also, you're going to see at the corners of your screen. Now, for some reason, it's gold right now. Usually that is red. I imagine it's just kind of a visual bug. Usually you're getting that gold marking at the very top of your screen is red, and it, again, will show you which direction damage is coming from, and on top of the fact that we can hear where he's coming from, all of which is information that is saying we should probably be looking up, because that damage indicator is coming from a direction in which there's no one in front of us there, so it obviously would be up, right? And then we kind of react slowly to the Reaper being on top of us. Very nice though with the flashbang headshot. That was good.
I feel like a new man. Easy.
Missing a lot of those flashes over the shield, so we just gotta watch it. I mean, like, there's no real trick to it. You just gotta aim up and flash, and we want to make sure, again, kind of intentionality behind it. We're paying extra close attention to our flashbangs to make sure we're getting them over. So, like, this isn't obviously the biggest priority at the moment for you to work on, but if you were to work on it, you would in your head be thinking, okay, I need to land this flash. I'm gonna land this flash. Focus, 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 right? And we're going to therefore be able to hit that flash a little bit better if we're not just kind of autopilot throwing it.
I've secured the payload. Let's move it out.
Okay. I like that we're repositioning the high ground there. That's good.
Rest in peace.
Fire at will.
Very nice. Good high noon usage. So far ultimates have actually been looking decently solid.
Smart, don't it?
Yep, so,
You best head for the hills.
again,
I'm on
adjusting
fire.
things around a little bit. Ultimates, still probably say low to medium. Mechanics, we have the only thing we've added in the mechanics has been the crosshair placement, which I'd probably say bumps it up maybe to a low to medium, but we have a lot of things sitting at low to medium right now. Just kind of chilling there. I'd probably say ability usage, I'm going to bump up a little bit in comparison to the other ones. We'll probably put ability usage just to spread this out a little bit to make it more obvious on which things need to work on first. Probably say that ability usage bumps up to a medium, awareness bumps up to medium high, and then positioning bumps up to high, right? And that's just kind of the hierarchy of like what needs to be worked on, first to last, and what's the most important things and has the most things going on that's wrong. So far those other ones, and then survivability, that's kind of a category as well to add in there that I probably would pair with positioning. So I'll probably just make that the category instead is positioning / survivability, and we'll have those kind of combined there because survivability has been really tied into positioning so far, and then we've also been dying quite a bit because of it.
Payload in track.
Okay, not really gonna do any damage from that range. Might as well just shoot at the people in front of us, to be honest. And yeah, that's a big thing there. So we just kind of shooting at people who are like a mile away from us. Or like here, probably didn't get too much value out of shooting at those people. Just kind of shoot at the people in front of us.
Yeah, I knew I wouldn't kill them, but I was trying to just put a little bit of pressure on them so they'd back up.
Nanoboost administered.
There's no one to stop me now.
Which I would imagine, like, with the problem being there is, like, I imagine it's so little pressure based off of the damage that you're doing that it really didn't cause them to back up, and you could see there that pretty much most of the time they were shooting at them, they still just shot back, and they weren't really too afraid of standing there still. So I don't think we really succeeded with the pressure, mainly due to the range in which we were at. Which means that we just want to make sure we're closer, right? I think when we were shooting at them, we were shooting at them from like over here, and then down here, whereas let's say we're just like a little bit closer. Let's say we're like over here. Well, now we've closed that gap by like an extra like 10 meters in comparison to over there, and probably like 20 meters in comparison to over there, which is that now we're a little bit more within range. So again, just putting ourselves at a better range in which to shoot people from might be a lot more effective there. Okay. Death, right? We're analyzing death. Obviously not a good death because it's 20 seconds. First death of the fight. Not a good death, right? We can analyze. Why did die? Scanning through the 4 things. Was a lack of awareness? Not really. We weren't really not aware of anything here. It seems like we were fully aware of everything, but now we get into the other 3, and I'd probably say it's a little bit of each, right? We rolled into their team, which probably usually isn't a very good move. The only time you'd want to roll into somebody is if you know that you're going to be safe while doing so, right? You don't want to suicide to get a kill, right? 1 for 1 is never a good trade as a DPS, ever, right? Really, unless it's like a Natal Blading Genji or something where you're getting like 2 ults out of a death, right? Very rarely is a 1 for 1 going to be actually worth it, which means that this is not worth it. So misuse of abilities, over aggression because we just kind of rolled straight into them, and then poor positioning, right? Because we just kind of roll out into the open, no cover anywhere, right? Just nearest cover is a mile away, and then therefore we get shredded very easily. So all 3 kind of impact this one. So just gotta work on all 3. Better positioning would just been to sit back more, right, rather than rolling straight into them. And then that results in death, and then that death has a big impact on losing that fight, right? That was our impact on losing there. Like you can see that direct. We die, we lose fight, right?
Hello.
That's not gonna happen every time, but it will happen a lot.
60 seconds.
Okay, here our team's pushing forwards. Yes, we should be pushing forwards as well. That's a good idea.
Pass into the iris. Area destroyed.
Reiner just decided to AFK for a moment there.
It's
Yep. Massive high noon, good timing. I like how we waited for like the bubble and then we saw people are out in the open. Really good high noon usage again. Kind of not really one of the big things that's needed to be worked on.
Triple kill.
unstoppable. I'm on a rampage. Pardon me. Hey.
All right.
Ready for battle.
Such a weird defense. I'm not used to defending like this.
5, 4,
Defending like with your team all spread out like this.
Well, like our team decided to hold like right against the spawn doors, which
3.
I'm not super used to. So
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to do that.
Mhm.
So if I could have gone back, I would have been Widow instead. But
Yeah,
like, I
so-
should have probably moved up though,
Mhm.
a bit closer, like where Anna's at or something.
Yep. Yeah, or even if our team's like trying to engage right in their spawn, we probably just like stand like somewhere like over here where we just have this room to fall back to if we need to. But yeah, you're right. This is definitely a strategy that is used, especially the higher up in ranks you go. And in team play that it is used, though would imagine this isn't something that's used too often at lower ranks, and it's harder to coordinate when people aren't talking. So the only thing I would say to this is just know that it's a thing now. And this is the thing anytime you make a mistake, right, that you just didn't know, which is a very honest mistake to make. Like if you didn't know this is a strat, well now you know, right? Make sure in the future we know it's a strat, so pay attention to, is my team going for it or are they just positioning back, right? It's the same way like if you're new to a game and you don't know a part of the map and you're like, oh snap, now I know this part of the map exists. Next time I'll make sure I take that, right? Just make sure we're not just doing this the exact same way the next time.
2, 1. Attackers incoming. Stop the payload.
So yeah, I would imagine here what's going to happen as a result is just Reinhardt gets instantly melted because he doesn't have team support. We don't really have too much of an impact because the entire fight is happening so far away. Keeping in mind as well that that Ashe has the exact same fall off damage as like McCree does, right? She has a little bit more range. I'd probably say she is more so within the range of like Hanzo, where it's more like 15 to maybe even a little bit further than Hanzo. I'd probably say like she prefers to be like 20 to 40 meters roughly. Is her range, but if we're further than that, that's a little bit too far. So just being a little, I mean, here, honestly, like just being closer with our team. But if your whole team's holding back, then holding here is fine. Yeah, our team's just
Yeah, I held back here way too long.
If you, I mean, even if you don't know that this is a strategy, if you see your team doing this, just go follow them, right? Like a good, saying from the coach Jane, you probably know him, the Overwatch League coach, right? Or former, I believe. In any case, he says that when one person is doing something stupid, that's called feeding. When 6 people are doing something stupid, that's called a strategy. So, and whenever you see that your entire team is going and doing something that you perceive to be stupid, go ahead and do it with them, because by us not participating, we're essentially, it's as if we were dead here, right? Again, kind of getting back to that, where we're not really outputting a ton of value at this distance. So even if we didn't know that this was a strat, after we see our team is there for a good solid 40 seconds, we should probably just be pushing up to be with them, right? Rather than positioning ourselves so far back. So just, if your team's doing stuff stupid, go and join them. If you have one single person being stupid, don't join them. Like if, for example, like if your team's holding in the corner and then all of a sudden your Reinhardt just charged straight into their spawn, right? It's not like you can follow up with that, and he's being the one person being stupid on his own. Just let him be stupid, right? But if your whole team is doing it, go and join them.
Yeah, I didn't think it was like stupid. I just didn't expect it
Yeah,
to stay that far away that long.
just kind of surprised by it.
Yeah, I expected the fight to move towards me much sooner than it did.
Yep. So honestly, we can just probably skip past all of it. Like the big thing is just we should be closer, and that's pretty much it. Just positioning / awareness of our team, a little bit of awareness mixed in there. But I'm just sitting real far. I mean, we're still doing stuff.
I get a couple of picks, but most of it's my team, and they're doing a good job. But
Yep.
I did never expected it to last that long, that far away, or otherwise I would have repositioned.
Yep.
Smoke 'em out. Thanks.
Which, I mean, like, even keep in mind that we do have, like, in between fights where we can reposition as well, right? I mean, like...
I panicked here. I didn't even know they had a monkey. Or I didn't know he was coming for me. Time I did, it was too late.
Alright. No, I think... Just checking, yeah. So, I mean, this is, I would probably say, a result, and you can just so you can see it. We also charged Bob super slowly, it took us like 2 minutes and 40 seconds, which is a little bit long to charge an ultimate, which is just from the fact that we weren't really doing a ton of damage, and then therefore weren't really accomplishing a ton. So just, again, adding on to the point that we were making before, but you understand it so far here. Alright, so we get Dynamite off, we go up to the high ground tiers, fine, that's good.
Somebody get me some healing.
Trying to get topped off before I start peeking.
There, we don't detonate the dynamite. Do you know why we wouldn't?
I probably just missed or forgot or something.
Yeah, we just kind of don't shoot there, right? Just, making sure we're detonating dynamite.
I've got you in my sights.
Just keeping in mind that, again, probably say this is out of range. Like, the Widowmaker is much different from Ashe, right? This would be fine if you're on Widowmaker, because Widowmaker doesn't receive fall off, and then until like 300 meters, and then even when she does, it is a tiny little bit, and then on top of that, she also has a scope that goes further than yours, and
It's funny that you say that, and you'll see why.
Okay, yeah, so,
They switch the Widow, and she picks me.
Yeah, so overall, just this is out of range as Ashe. You should be much closer. Ashe is more so think of her as a medium to long range character, not a long range character, where Widowmaker is a long range character who can play at a medium range. Ashe is a medium to long range character, and here we're just playing at that really long range, which just means that we're missing a ton of shots. Like in that last fight, or I guess like in this last half of the fight, we hit like one single headshot on the Ashe, and like that's it. So you just see how we're missing a ton, how it's even when we're hitting the shots, we're not doing nearly as much damage. So you see she swapped to Widow and picks us. Do we notice that she's on Widow?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, okay, so probably
That's
say that that's popped up a couple times so far where we haven't been aware of when people are swapping characters. So keep in mind that team composition dictates playstyle, and it's really important to know what characters are on. So for example, us playing up against a Widowmaker is much different than us playing against an Ashe, as you know here, we just get picked immediately, whereas if they're on Ashe, it might not be as big of a deal at this range. So pay attention to team compositions. A good way to do this is to press tab, right? So it's usually a good habit to be into, to press tab basically in between every single fight of the game. So anytime a fight ends, press tab. That way you can just scan real quick. Did their team make any swaps? Did my team make any swaps? You know, what ults does my team have? You get additional information as you get more advanced with it. On top of that, you just want to make sure you're paying attention to compositions at the very beginning of a game. That way you can just think about how you're playing accordingly. We didn't notice the monkey swapped, we didn't know the widow swapped, and I also think there's one like last game that I forgot about as well, that we just didn't notice character swaps. And then here that just dictates how we should be playing, because we should be playing a little bit differently when we're up against the widow than when we're up against the Ashe. Namely being much more careful in the 1v1s, as Widowmaker can one-shot us from any distance in the game and is much more dangerous than the Ashe.
Yeah, I tab a lot, but yeah, I don't check the enemy comp as much as I should. Normally, I'm just checking like my friendly ultimates and stuff.
Yep. Alright, and then being out of range of the fight, not participating, more of that happening here, right? Oh, whoops, I made a skip there. My bad.
Yeah, it was just 2 seconds left, so I didn't want to give up my position there because I thought it was good, but in hindsight, I should
Yeah.
have been on the other high ground.
Yep, probably. I'm also thinking maybe that was probably a bad usage of Bob, as we do Bob after we're at a very heavy disadvantage and or a lost fight here. Now it does look like we actually end up winning this fight in like 40 seconds. So I just say just be careful, because there we do use it after we're down 2 people, which either is a very heavy disadvantage or is a lost fight. But because we haven't seen it more often, I won't go super in depth on it. Bob gets slept. Too short of a range with the dynamite, which is going to be much harder to hit at a range anyways, right? So just being closer will help us if dynamite's a little bit better. Missing all of our shots, standing
Widow's
still.
staring at me, and I didn't notice.
Yep, just a lot of micro mistakes there. Not noticing Widow, standing still, missing dynamite, throwing Bob in during a lost fight here. Now we do somehow get him off. I would imagine maybe do they just C9? Because it looks like we're heavily losing this fight here. Oh, okay, Junkrat just kills everything. Okay, that's how you win. Alright, so Junkrat kind of carries there. Like, so far, we just haven't really seen us making those plays. Like, like, for example, Junkrat here gets 3 kills. I don't know if we've seen so far in the 2 games we've been in, us getting more than 2 kills in a fight, right? Just want to make sure upping our output by fixing all these mistakes is going to be doing wonders for your climbing. Alright. So let's just get into the next
those are
one.
two of my bad games of recent.
Okay.
Now traveling to Busan. Ready for battle. Three.
Enemies detected.
Very nice. Good mechanics.
My thanks.
I stand still and die.
Yep. Just you got it. You nailed it on the head. we end up doing that quite a bit, right? Like just so far within the 2 games, we've seen that result in
I
2
think I
deaths,
just
right?
don't notice that they notice me. Like, obviously, they know I'm there, but I just don't notice that
Yeah.
they're
If
about to
we're
shoot me.
if we shoot at them, assume that they know that you're there, right? The only time
Yeah.
that we should think that they don't notice us is if, let's say, we just like just going real extreme here. Let's just say like for somehow we got like behind them and we're like right here. No one's looking at us. We can assume that they're not going to know we're here. But as soon as we shoot that first shot, now they do know that we're here. So what we can do is, they have to take time to adjust to see us. So we can maybe shoot 2 shots, and then from there on, we have to move around because we have to make the assumption they know where we are. Over here, we are in front of them, not behind them, and we shot like 8 shots. We should be of the assumption that they know that we're here, because assuming otherwise would probably not be very smart, and that's assuming that everyone on the enemy team is dumb and doesn't see anything, right? Because we just shot at them 8 times, are standing still in a doorway, and they know what direction the damage is coming from, right? So like there's just a lot of information that they have to know that we're here. So we shouldn't be surprised when they do know we're here. So make sure, therefore, we are moving around. We would maybe only be able to stand still for the time span that takes us to hit 1 single shot, right, or 2 shots. Then that results in a death.
We get kind of rolled on this point.
No payment required. This one's
All
on
right. If you feel like you got rolled here, would you like to skip past it or no?
Up to you.
Oh, that
I
me.
don't think it's not. There's not a whole lot of gameplay. It's just us getting shit on.
Okay. Well, then why don't we just go
This
ahead and skip
round.
forwards? We have more time anyways, right?
See that which is unseen.
Enemy contact. Ned.
Get in here. Get inside.
Marked by the dragon. I
Taking the high ground. You all look like you needed some healing.
marked.
Right, once again, just positioning ourselves really far back. Probably just benefit from being closer, like maybe up towards like right here-ish, where we can actually see down main, participate down main, climb up top left if we need to, and we have this left high ground if we need to, but here we're just kind of playing like a Widowmaker distance-wise, right? Just want to be much closer. Contrary to how they label him, I wouldn't really call Hanzo a sniper. He can snipe, yes, but I wouldn't say that that's how he wants to be playing most of the time. Because, you're playing at this range and it's just very hard to hit those shots. Like, very unlikely that we hit that headshot at that distance, right? We can do it, but it's just super difficult. So why try when you could just put yourself closer and it'd be much easier? Because again, we're just kind of...
That choke is just so small that I'm not really aiming. I'm just kind of spamming it. So when I'm just spamming, I'm trying to play further back so I can see more.
Well, I mean, like from right here, what would you be unable to seal, right? We can see 1, 2, 3, we can see everywhere here, and then on top of that, you can really, that distance is really going to do nothing but harm us, because even if we're just spamming down choke hasn't been the only thing we're shooting at. We've been shooting a lot of the people in the top left, which becomes very inaccurate. Even spamming down choke, you want to intentionally, like let's say somebody is low HP or out of position or not behind the shield, we might actually want to be intentionally aiming our shots instead of just spam. And if we're intentionally trying to aim our shots, we want to be closer, whereas this limits us to only spamming, right? Whereas that's probably not what we want to be doing, is only spamming. So even if, and then what happens once they get like past the choke, for example? Right now we're even for we're still far away, and now they're not in that tiny choke. So I just say no matter what, probably standing a bit closer would just be a good idea there.
You're going to be okay. Get healed. Nanoboost administered.
Are you ready?
Okay. There you just missed a lot of mechanical shots. Right. That was just pretty much it. You just whiffed everything.
Yeah, I didn't want to be on Hanzo, but
Mhm.
that popped off.
Helden sterben nicht. Smoke 'em out of
So,
there.
do you mind telling me, for example, because I'm noticing maybe a couple swaps like where I wouldn't say like I probably would say that like we're just swapping to swap in some instances, and I don't feel like okay. So for example, this one I think this is fine. We're swapping the Ashe because we're trying to kill the Pharah and we don't want to be on Hanzo. But for example, let's say the Hanzo to McCree swap, just at the very beginning of this game. What would you say was the reasoning that you made that swap?
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Um,
I don't know. I pick potential, being able to
yeah.
play a little further away. I guess I don't know.
I mean, Hanzo has technically better in both of those. Hanzo technically has more pick potential with the ability to hit his one shot, and as well is a further range character than the McCree. So swapping over to McCree gets you lower in both of those. I would just say make sure like when you are swapping that you're not just swapping to swap. Unless you feel like you're doing super terrible on a character and you just need to swap to freshen things up. The only times you should be swapping is if the character is good in this instance. So for example, here Ashe is fine. You're on a medium ranged map. You're going up against a Pharah. This is good. We're all good here. But when we're swapping from Hanzo to McCree, honestly, I would say on that last map, Hanzo's a better character than McCree on that map. Therefore, it was kind of a weird swap, especially when you're giving up ult charge, which I've seen us swapping quite a bit. Another example is like going back to the first game we were in, like why Hanzo to Echo? It's not a good Echo map, right? It's like there's no good Echo, good maps for Pharah and Echo are going to be maps where you have a lot of high ground cover, right? Where you can use high ground cover very easily. So think, for example, one of the best maps in the game for Pharah Echo, it would be like Garden, Lijiang Garden, Lijiang Tower Garden, where you have that big sky tower, like something like this, where it just goes straight up in the sky and you can go super high. You get a really high skybox. You have this tower that you can use as cover, right? Good Echo and Pharah maps have cover usage, whereas the Route 66 is probably one of the like not so great Echo and Pharah maps because there's a lot less cover that you can use up in the sky. There really wasn't much. So again, in that instance, we're swapping off and losing ult charge and we're also swapping to a character where I'd probably say Hanzo's better on that map than Echo is. Though Echo is a very flexible character, and if you one-trick Echo or you play Echo mainly, like if you main Echo, go ahead and play her there. But if you play both of them and you're just trying to play them where they would be useful, probably aren't going to want to play her there. So again, do you maybe have a reasoning in which you would have swapped there?
I switched to Echo there just for the mobility, being able to get on and off high ground and
Okay.
between the different high grounds, and then her stickies are more reliable than me getting headshots.
Yeah. So the high grounds one, I mean, Hanzo can get the high grounds pretty fast as well, just with his climb. And then, I mean, where it's not like really there was like if you're thinking on attack, right? There's one high ground that you can get to, unless like in total there's your front high ground that you can use, and then their gas station, and then maybe the high ground on the top left. Your high ground is just as easy to get to as Hanzo. The high ground behind them is probably not where you want to be positioning on Hanzo or Echo unless you like take that space. And then the top left high ground is probably again just as easy to access on both. So once again, I mean now if you're more comfortable with the stickies and landing shots, that's definitely like that is something where maybe you'd prefer the Echo there, which is good. I would just say the point I'm making here is don't swap randomly. Make sure you have an intentional thought behind the swap so that you're not wasting ult charge is a big one. And then you can also have a little bit more practice on the characters, on the right maps for the characters. Do you feel like maybe you struggle with understanding which maps are better for which characters? Or which situations are better for which characters? Because we can maybe walk through that real quick.
Maybe a few maps
Okay, so just
like that, but I don't know off the
yeah.
top of my head of one.
Yeah, so in general, you have maps and team compositions that dictate what characters you should be playing. McCree, in comparison to, like, if you're comparing Kree to, McCree, Ashe, and Hanzo are all pretty similar, right? Sim and Echo are unique, right? But Kree, Hanzo, and Ashe all provide pretty similar utility in what they're doing. McCree is going to, out of all of them, be the best character to run in a up against like a dive composition because he has the best counter dive with his flashbang and more health. He's also going to be like the most flexible out of the three, maybe. I get all of them are pretty flexible. I'll probably say Ashe is the least flexible. McCree probably say is like the most flexible. Hanzo in the middle of all of them. Hanzo pairs best if you have characters that combo well with him, right? Such as like a Zarya who you can grab Dragon with. Then on top of that, let's see what else. McCree likes to be a little bit closer, like so range-wise. McCree likes a closer range than Ashe and Hanzo. So if you're on a closer range map, you might want McCree. If you're on a more open, wide map, you might want Hanzo or Ashe, right? Then on top of that, let's see. Hanzo can get easy high ground access, so having a lot of high grounds might be better. You might want to take him over McCree as well. Just kind of listing through a lot of the scenarios in which you use each. Symmetra you use, on a really brawly map, or like super close range, fast-paced map, or if you're defending, sometimes that could be useful in certain maps, or if you're trying to go for like a TP play, such as like Hanamura first point, where a lot of people like to TP to point. Then finally, Echo is going to be most useful on maps that have high ground. She is best played when your team is playing a super long distance, slow paced comp such as Spam. And she's also pretty useful in a dive. But she's probably going to be worst if you're playing her with a brawl composition. Whereas I believe, let's see, were we playing? I'm trying to think back to last game here, and I actually don't know if I paid attention to the comp we were on there. So that's the other thing to keep in mind is like what composition your team is running, because sometimes your different characters play better with different compositions, right? Are you familiar with what the difference between brawl and spam are?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like for example, Symmetra and McCree would be doing much better in a brawl, whereas Ashe, Hanzo, and Echo would do much better in a spam. So just the difference between the close, fast, and long, slow play styles, right? So those are just all different instances where you would find the certain characters better than other characters. So why don't we just go ahead and continue on here. So this swap I think is good. Standing still a long time there. Right, that just gets us hit by a rocket. Possibly gets us killed by other people too. Just want to get... Dynamite does not get damage boosted through... Or does it? I don't think it gets damage boosted through the window.
I wasn't trying to. I was just trying to catch him on fire, but someone woke him up first.
Yeah, so in that instance, I'll probably just go for like a damage boost, either headshot or just unscoped shot, so you can probably melt him like insanely fast through the window. Probably Dynamite's not needed.
Double kill.
I always like work.
I need healing. Justice reigns from above. There's no stopping me once I get into a rhythm.
Ready
With
for
every
battle.
death,
2, 1. Round 3. Capture the...
Ooh, very nice.
marked by the dragon.
The objective is now...
Yeah, so as we've gone on, I've seen abilities landing less and less. Like, I haven't when we storm arrow. Honestly, I see us whiffing like every single shot. Maybe in storm arrows, make sure you're not just like holding down unless you know that you're on top of somebody. Like here, we just kind of notice how we use these insanely fast. Like we go through it and then it's just immediately gone. Like we just hold it down, hold. Sometimes you can just tap click, especially when you're not on top of somebody. The only really when you would hold it down is if you're confident in your shots or you're aiming at like a tank or a shield. Right, those are where you'd be holding it down. But here, probably not a situation where I would hold it down. On top of that, we just whiff every shot. I've noticed us whiffing flashbangs and whiffing dynamites, making sure we're intentionally putting thought and effort into our ability usage, as a lot of them have just been not landing, and not doing anything as a result. Notice how we just kind of run into their team there, die because we're overly aggressive, out of position, right? Whereas we could have just sat further back here, spammed at them, spam, medium distance, right? And then just backed up if we're like with our team as they're backing up, right? And then therefore that, staggers us longer, gets us killed. We swap again to the McCree, which, like, if I'm looking at that if I'm looking in this situation, like, it seems as though, like, almost every single game we're in so far, we've swapped to a different character after the first fight. Like, every single round of every game we've been in so far, we've swapped after first fight. So if we're looking at their composition, right, we're swapping McCree, and we're going, okay, well, why are we swapping McCree? Okay, Hanzo's good because
Genji.
it's for Genji, right?
Why I switched.
Would be one character. I mean, yeah, you can. I mean, I might say, like, I'm trying to think through that. I'd probably say that's like a tiny little bit of value that you're gaining out of that. Like, that is probably approximately the same as the amount of value you're losing from swapping characters. So a tiny bit of value, but also just losing ultimate charge. Like, there, how much ult charge do we lose when we swap? We lose 60% ult charge, which is a easy ult combo. Like, we can look at we can combo with grab super easily as Hanzo here, so we're just losing out on our ult charge there that we could have been using. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, is that, we just we've done it every single game so far, and it's probably not going to be needed every game. Now, there are certain instances where you do want to swap, and if you want to swap fast, even if you're close to your ultimates. Like, let's say they're on a full dive. Well, no, that's really different, right? Now McCree is going to be much better than Hanzo, whereas here I'd probably say McCree's only like like the value that you're getting out of swapping McCree to deal with a Genji is so little in comparison to Hanzo that you might as well just not swap so you can keep the ult charge. Whereas if they were on something more, more powerful, or McCree's better in the situation, then McCree might be a little bit better here. That's unfortunate. Good. Okay, but we got away anyways.
Helden sterben nicht.
Okay, so let's rewatch this a little bit. Pick out a little bit. So here we go, shoot. Notice how we take a random pause with our last shot here, though. So we have one shot left, and we just kind of hold on to it. This is where we should be reloading, as we don't see anybody. So anytime you have a lull in a fight,
I was trying to complete that kill on that guy, but Zarya got it.
yeah, well, I'm saying keep an eye on this. Look, we hold on to it, and then hold on to it, and then we shoot it, right? So it's just we kind of hold on to it there, and we probably could have just reloaded. And then on top of that, notice how we stray very far out in the open, no cover anywhere, right? Again, so once again, death because of positioning. No cover anywhere, better positioning again, just kind of walking you through this so you can look to do it for yourself as well. Better positioning would be more so like using this left wall's cover, right? This left wall's cover means we can do this on enemies, right? We can use this doorway if we need to on Ana, right? We can be where Zenyatta's at, just anywhere but standing on the open, right?
Back into the mix.
Fire at will.
A lot of body shots, and we do just up a little bit there at the end.
Move them up, get them out.
Also, there, I think we flash into the Grav. Probably not needed. If anything, I would flash, like, if I saw him, like, trying to use the heal, or if, for example, like, the Grav ends and he still looks like he's going to get away, then we can flash. But it's kind of just a wasted flash if we're flashing into an ultimate. Like, if we're basically stunning into a stun already. That's like if we flashed into a shatter, right? It's just not really going to do anything, and then there didn't really do anything. So just make sure we're not, like, overlapping the two.
I couldn't really see. I was just trying to keep him from healing.
Which, I mean, we can see when he is healing, because we'll see him use this big puff up thing, right? So let's look at this instance again, right? Okay, so we do see him, but he gets shattered. Like, these guys are all on the floor. They just got shattered, right? So this flash just doesn't do anything because they're already shattered, right? And if anything, actually, no, it doesn't. Okay, never mind. I thought maybe it woke them up from shatter, but maybe I'm wrong there. Nice shot there.
I'm on fire.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to do a quick go over the main points of the session, kind of what were the things that you need to work on most. Then after that we'll go, or in between that, right, we'll go over the quicker review as well, and then finally we'll wrap up the session and we'll just end it there. So main points. Number one, very obviously, because I repeated it 1,000 times, was positioning, right? Making sure we're paying attention to our general positioning, making sure we're using cover properly, because that was a big, massive one, was that we just weren't using our cover at all, right? This is also, I forgot to mention that it's positioning / survivability, as we just died a lot as well due to positioning. So going back to positioning, right? Being in your cover, using high grounds as often as possible whenever they're an option, making sure on high grounds that we're still using cover and we're using the ledge, right? Making sure we're identifying the difference between good high ground and bad high grounds, right? Bad high ground is where there is no ledge to back up to. Good high ground is most high grounds where you do have a ledge, right? Where you do have something that we can back up from away from people, right? On top of that, the right ranges on different characters, right? McCree is going to be roughly 10 meters to like 30 meters. Hanzo is going to be roughly like 15 meters, like roughly here to like maybe like 35 meters, like somewhere like here. Yeah, somewhere like right here is like probably the furthest away I would get, right? On like unless besides certain situations, right? Ashe is maybe slightly further. I'd say maybe like, you can be a little bit closer to Ashe, but probably say maybe like 20 meters is a good starting point, and then maybe let's see, probably say kind of around 35 to 40 meters would be good range on Ashe, right? So that's just the ranges on all those different characters and where you want to be standing. Symmetra, she probably wants to be standing whenever possible around this 10-meter range, and this is the range which she prefers, is within this distance, so she can actually land her beam. Actually, I think, I don't know what range she has on her beam. I think it's like maybe 15 meters or 12 meters or so, and whatever that is, that's the range that Symmetra prefers, is her beam range, so that she can actually get her beam up and going. Actually, I don't know where, okay, she's right here. Alright, so just test that out real quick. Right, so beam hits at, okay, like 12 meters-ish. So that's the range in which you prefer on Symmetra's, within that range. Anything outside of that isn't preferred. And then Echo, again, like you can play her very spammily. You can play from a distance, though she does prefer a slightly closer distance because she does want, she's outside of her range of beam here. She can't land shots as accurately from this distance. So if Echo preferred a distance, it's really going to Echo's very fluid. It really depends on the situation. But, whenever possible within range to actually beam something which is 15 meters, I believe, yep. So like right here to beam stuff. And then she can play far away, though I probably wouldn't recommend getting any closer than the 15 meters if possible. I'd probably say no closer than 10 meters, and then no further than like the 35, 40 meters of like Ashe, right, is where Echo wants to be standing. All right, now on to more positioning, or let's see, is there anything else in positioning? That's most of it. Rotate in between fights, go up and hold spawn, stand with your team. And then survivability real quick, right? Think about survivability, obviously, is something you want to work on, right? You want to stay alive. You want to do things. Every time you're dying, wasting 20 seconds, and then losing the fight for your team or having a big impact on losing it. So make sure you're staying alive. Pay attention to why you're dying so you can look to fix it, right? Fix it by mainly 4 different reasons why you could die is misuse of abilities, lack of awareness, poor positioning, and then over-aggression. We've seen all of them so far, but main one has been positioning, so pay attention to our positioning so we're not dying. Then on from there, number two thing to work on is going to be your awareness, right? There's just lots of bits and pieces here and there where we just weren't paying attention to things around us, where we didn't pay attention to team compositions, and tab. Pay attention to just general, where's the enemy team, where's my team at, right? Paying attention to that so we can go and join our team when they're in their spawn and stay, know where the enemy team is so Junkrat's not sneaking up right next to us, right? paying attention to health bars, so we're not beaming somebody and then
Locking on.
them being like full HP, right? Paying attention to what are some other ones? Let's think. Just a lot of odds and ends here and there where it just like it really added up. You know, sometimes where we're ulting in a lost fight at like the very end there, where Junkrat just clutched it by coming back, maybe not using Bob in that situation. And then overall, you know, this one just comes in at number 2, just because it's not nearly as bad as positioning, but there was a lot that went into this one as well. Number 3, ability usage, just a lot of ability stuff from different characters. Echo, honestly, I'd probably say it was one of the more solid ones that we had with our abilities in comparison to the other characters. Stickies looked very solid, only once in a while where we just whiffed them with our, whatever it's called, the beam, right? Make sure beam that we're not using on full HP targets, and then when we see they're not full HP, we cancel it so we can keep shooting. And then fly, make sure you're using cover in the sky too, right? We're using sky cover, right? Then besides that, we played Ashe, make sure you're landing your dynamites. Coach Gun, nothing really. We just missed a lot of our dynamites. McCree, make sure we're intentionally thinking about our flashbang, as we missed a lot of flashbangs as well. Make sure we're getting them over shields. I think most of the ones we missed were us trying to get it over the Reinhardt shield. Then on from that, Hanzo as well, right? Hanzo, I'd probably say the big one was just Storm Arrow. Sonic, we did well. Jump, we did well. Storm Arrow, we just want to make sure we're putting more thought and effort into it, and just don't hold it down unless you have a reason to hold it down. Like if we're already aiming straight at something, we can hold it down, but we just kind of held it down and then missed every single shot. So just maybe tap click it if you're not already aiming at something, or something like a tank or a shield. Moving on, I think that was all the characters we went over mainly. Symmetra, make sure you're throwing out your turrets at like as early as possible so you can get them recharging by the time the game starts, right? And then that is pretty much it for abilities. So moving on to number 4. Let's see. Probably put number 4 at mechanics. Mechanics, was one where just, this one was honestly one of the better ones, right? Not a ton of stuff, but making sure we're aiming head level, right? Not at body level. So crosshair placement, make sure we're aiming up, so we're hitting a lot more headshots. We didn't hit a ton of headshots, which will mean more damage and more kills as a result. Make sure that we are using a left beam on Symmetra, beam versus right, just spamming right clicks, then that comes in at ranges. Besides that, probably say the other thing. I had one other thing in my head. I'm forgetting it now that I am talking. And then, yeah, it's just like a lot of, moments where we just whiff a ton of shots, like when we were just shooting at the Farah as Hanzo, where we just like, whiff 10 shots in a row, and then that happened a lot of times, right? Your mechanics will definitely be propped up once you start working on the other areas, especially positioning. Positioning really props up mechanics, but for the moment, mechanics still does need a tiny bit of work, right, in there. Finally comes that ultimate usage. High Noon looked really solid, good timing with it, good job not holding on to it, no real problems there. I didn't see a single dragon because we swapped off of Hanzo like after like the first second of him every time. Symmetra, I didn't see anything. Bob usage, I saw one of them. Just make sure we're not throwing Bob if you see that you're like down 2 people and the fight's looking like you're at a big disadvantage, right? And then that's pretty much it. Echo, we saw a little bit of, right, with the duplicate. Just make sure we're not charging straight into their team as Reinhardt. And then that was pretty much it there. So it's just a tiny little bit of here and there odds and ends, right? And then I imagine there will be things in the future, right? If you keep playing, it's not like, and you're not perfect at your ultimates, right? So, but overall was the weakest one, or sorry, to clarify, it was the strongest one of yours, right? It was the one that needed the least work and improvement, so that's why it comes in at the bottom. So that is pretty much it. Do you have any questions on anything we've talked about?
No, that all makes sense.
All right. Or just anything else about the game as well is also there as an option.